Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be tackling an ironic and somewhat paradoxical topic. How Brexit Britain became Europe's most migrant-friendly country. Yes, you heard that right. At a time when Britain is supposedly taking back control of its borders and reducing immigration, the UK has found itself attracting more migrants than ever before, while at the same time anti-immigrant sentiment continues to grow. So, how does that work? How can a country be both more welcoming to migrants and at the same time more hostile? It's a contradiction we're going to unpack today, so stick around as we dive into the tangled world of post-Brexit immigration and the rise of anti-immigrant sentiment in Britain. Before we jump in, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more deep dives into politics and social issues. But let's get started. To really understand how we got here, we need to go back to the promises made during the infamous Brexit campaign. Taking back control was the slogan that echoed through the streets, on billboards and across social media. For many who voted Leave, it was about reclaiming sovereignty over Britain's borders with a clear goal of reducing immigration, particularly from Europe. And the message was simple. Leaving the EU would end the free movement of people, cut the number of migrants, and allow Britain to choose who comes into the country. For a lot of voters, this meant fewer immigrants and more jobs and resources for British citizens. Fast forward to today, and what do we have? Britain might have ended free movement from the EU, but instead of cutting immigration, the country is seeing a surge in migrants from outside of Europe. The irony? Britain's new post-Brexit immigration policies have made it easier for skilled workers from places like India, Nigeria and Pakistan to come there. In a way, Brexit has made Britain more open to migration than it ever was before. So how did Brexit Britain end up with more migrants after supposedly taking back control? The answer lies in the points-based immigration system introduced post-Brexit. This system was designed to be more selective, only allowing in the right kind of migrants, meaning those with certain skills, qualifications, or a job offer in the UK. On paper, the system looks pretty efficient. Potential migrants are awarded points for things like having a job offer, speaking fluent English, or having a degree. If you reach the right number of points, welcome to Britain. Sounds friendly, doesn't it? Britain gets to handpick skilled workers from all over the world, from doctors to tech specialists, to plug its labor shortages. In fact, this system has attracted more migrants than expected, with net migration numbers at record highs, with over 600,000, for example, in 2022. But here's where the irony really kicks in. While the government might have built a system that's more welcoming to highly skilled workers from non-EU countries, the public mood on immigration has been anything but welcoming. Here's the thing. While the UK government is busy attracting skilled migrants, or the Tory government has, there has been a noticeable rise of anti-immigrant sentiment across the country. Even though the UK is no longer part of the EU and has stopped the flow of lower skilled European migrants, the broader public perception of immigration has become even more negative. According to polls, a significant portion of the British public still sees immigration as a major problem, whether it's asylum seekers crossing the Channel or the overall number of migrants filling critical roles in the economy. In fact, you could argue that Brexit has fueled anti-immigrant sentiment rather than eased it. Now that the focus is off EU migrants, attention is shifted to migrants from outside Europe, asylum seekers and refugees. The government itself, the Tory government at the time, has ramped up its rhetoric against illegal immigrants, asylum seekers arriving by boat, and foreigners taking British jobs. So while the Tory government was busy opening its doors to highly skilled workers to keep the economy afloat, the public conversation often frames migrants, whether skilled or not, as a threat. So let's take a closer look at the numbers, because the contrast between actual migration trends and public perception is staggering. As I mentioned earlier, net migration to the UK has hit record levels, with a large portion of this increase coming from non-EU countries. For example, India is now the biggest source of migrants, overtaking EU countries like Poland and Romania. But despite these numbers reflecting the reality of Britain's global post-Brexit migrant pool, public perception hasn't kept pace. A 2023 survey found that 57% of Britons still think immigration is too high. This isn't just about illegal immigration, it's about migration, period. And even those coming through legal channels face suspicion and resentment. The government might have been rolling out the welcome mat for tax experts, scientists and doctors, but the message many British citizens were getting is still too many foreigners. And this brings us to the hostile environment policy, a term that, if we're being honest, sounds pretty far from migrant-friendly. Introduced years before Brexit, but ramped up in its aftermath, this policy was designed to make it difficult for undocumented migrants to live in the UK. The hostile environment essentially turns everyday services like healthcare, renting a home, or even opening a bank account into barriers for migrants, especially those without proper documentation. But as we saw in the Windrush scandal, this policy doesn't just affect undocumented migrants. It can also trap legal migrants in bureaucratic nightmares. So while on one hand the government was touting its points-based system as a way to attract the best and brightest from around the world, on the other hand, it was doubling down on making life hard for many other migrants, including refugees and asylum seekers who are often forced to go into legal limbo or face deportation. And this hostile environment certainly doesn't sound migrant-friendly, does it? It's this paradox that makes Britain's current approach to migration so complicated, and we have to see what Labour does with that. The policies might welcome one type of migrant while simultaneously punishing or pushing others out, and that literally. So where does this leave us? Britain post-Brexit is now more reliant on migrants than ever, especially in critical sectors like healthcare, IT and engineering. The NHS, for instance, would grind to a halt without foreign workers. At the same time, anti-immigrant rhetoric was on the rise for a long time, and former government policies were increasingly focused on making life harder for certain groups of migrants. So in the coming years, we are likely to see more skilled workers being welcomed into the country as labor shortages still persist. But at the same time, we will see how the government policy will be. Will there be another crackdown on asylum seekers and undocumented migrants, keeping the door open for some while closing it to others? The contradiction here is that while Britain might be friendly to certain migrants on paper, the reality is that public sentiment, political rhetoric, and government policy often told a very different story. So, in conclusion, how did Brexit Britain become Europe's most migrant-friendly country? Well, it didn't, at least not in the way most people think. While Britain has reshaped its immigration system to attract skilled workers from across the globe, anti-immigrant sentiment is stronger than ever. The points-based system might be open for business, but the hostile environment remains firmly in place. So this is a complex and ironic situation, one that will continue to shape Britain's future. But what do you think? Is Britain really more migrant-friendly Or is this just a case of selective openness? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, of course. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more in-depth discussions on global and political issues regarding the UK. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video right here in the end screen.